everybody. Welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We're out here at Montevallo High School where our game of the week is going to take place this Friday night between Montevallo and Lincoln. The final week of the regular season. Is crazy to see how fast this season has flown by. My second full year covering football here at the Shelby County Reporter, and it has been a blast as it was the first year, but even more fun this year in my opinion as we grow and find some different things across the county to cover and make our coverage better. So it's been a lot of fun. Another great year here in Shelby County with high school football, and we've got 5 playoff teams. We've got 6 others that won't make the postseason, and those teams are going to be looking to end the season on a strong note, either send their seniors out with a win if they've been struggling this season, or there's a lot of teams that really have gained momentum, have some winning streaks on the line, would love nothing more than to end the season with a 3-game win streak or, to win 2 or 3 of their last 3 games or so on. And that'll give some momentum boost for the team and the players that are coming back in 2019 that are returning, but it also sends the seniors out with a big victory. So, like I said, there's no playoff implications this Friday night. Most teams are going to be playing up or down a classification depending on the team, and they'll just be looking either to gain momentum going into the playoffs for those 5 playoff teams or to gain momentum going into 2019 and get those seniors out with a victory in their final game as they put on their team's jersey for the final time, which is always a sad night for those players. So we'll see how everything plays out, but should be a lot of fun to watch unfold. We've got those 5 playoff teams, though. Thompson making it out of Class 7A Region 3, the number 2 seed, so they finish as one of the top 2 teams in probably the most difficult region in the state. You also have the Pelham Panthers. They get the 3 seed. The 4 seed in their region, and Briarwood also into the postseason. They get the 2 seed out of their region, and Montevallo, the 2 seed, gets home field advantage. We'll talk a little bit more about them here in just a second in our game of the week. And then Vincent ends up making the playoffs. That was announced by the AHSAA on Monday. Vincent had a chance to sew things up, make it easy on themselves with a win against Fayetteville last Friday night. They lose that game, and that threw everything into chaos. A 3-way tie for the 4th place spot, the 4th playoff spot in that region with Horseshoe Bend and Fayetteville, the team they lost to last Friday. So we weren't really sure what was going to happen. Looking at the tiebreaker rules myself earlier this week, I was as confused as I've ever been. But the AHSA comes out Monday, and what I thought was supposed to last until the final week of the regular season and go down to the overall record was actually announced on Monday, with Vincent already having the better overall record of those 3 teams, that Vincent is the one that's going to the postseason. Not exactly sure the reasoning behind it, but it's the first time since 2014 the Yellow Jackets will be in the postseason, only the 19th time in their 90 years as a school playing football that they have made the postseason. So obviously a big deal for them, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that near the end of the show in our Vincent segment. We're going to break down all the games that we have going on this Friday night, obviously. Several like I said, that don't really have playoff implications but can give momentum for teams moving into the playoffs. And Montevallo is going to be one of those teams. We'll talk about that game first as our game of the week. In Montevallo's 53-32 win against Greensboro last week, we saw the offense flash again, especially through the air. Malik and Bennett, another incredible game, had 430 passing yards, 8 touchdown passes. I don't know if that sets some kind of record or not. I need to look into it. But 8 touchdown passes in a game, in one single game, is just unbelievable and an incredible feat. And 5 of those 8 touchdown passes and more than half of the yards went to one receiver. J.J. Evans, obviously been one of the best receivers in the state this year and one of the best receivers in the country, getting a lot of Division I looks when it comes to recruiting and some offers so far. But he had 226 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. So obviously we're going to be mentioning those guys later on in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. But head coach Brandon Wilcox wants to see a little bit more. They've got a solid running back in Deion Gilliland, and they want to get him going, especially into the postseason. That was Wilcox's main emphasis and point after the game on Friday night, was getting a running game established, because they're going to have to do that in the postseason. It's obviously, you can't go out. Teams are going to try know that the pass is coming. They're going to be able to stop that at some point when you start facing really good teams down the line. The passing may get you through the first round, maybe even the second round, but eventually you're going to have a balanced attack, and he knows that, and they've shown flashes of it with Gilliland having some incredible games throughout the 2018 football season. So I expect us to see a little bit of that in this game against Lincoln on Friday night as they try to really just prepare for the postseason. Already have the 2 seed locked up, home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. So they're going to try to do some things that are going to help them moving forward. They obviously want to win the game. but they're also going to try to better themselves for a deep playoff run at the same time. And this is a Lincoln team that's good anyway, so it's a good test for you to go ahead and try to do that. As Lincoln has won 6 of their last 7 games, 3 in a row, and is obviously playing well. And, Montevallo's had a couple of games this season against American Christian, against Sipsey Valley, that I thought they were going to have to play their A games in order to win those. They obviously went 1-1 with the loss to American Christian, ended up beating Sipsey Valley in a tight game. And this is another one of those games where they have to be clicking on all cylinders to be able to pick up a win. It's another 4A team that was in the 5A classification last year. And Montevallo has shown throughout the season that they can handle those teams that were up 2 classifications higher than them a season ago. But this one's going to be an interesting one. Like I said, the Golden Bears have won 3 games in a row, 6 of 7, and sit at 7-2 overall. Montevallo 8-1 on the season, so both two very good 4A football teams, and I expect a very good football game to come out of this one. For Lincoln, their offense only scoring 27.6 points per game compared to Montevallo's 42.8 points per game. But the Golden Bears do have a defense that should keep them in this game, giving up a total of just 22 points in their last 3 games, 14, 8, and 0 respectively. And on the season, just 16.6 points per game. And we've seen when Montevallo goes up against a good defense that their defense has also had to play well and has had to make plays to win games at the same time. So we'll see how that unfolds in this game Friday night. I do think the defense is going to have to make some plays, and I think we're going to see a different style offense to try to balance things out and get some momentum doing different things moving into the postseason. We'll see, but it should be a good game nonetheless. I expect this one to go down to the wire, and that's why it's our game of the week. Last week was just unreal for the Thompson Warriors. I mean, what an unbelievable performance on national television, down 28-0, to be able to bounce back, get your feet back under your nerves under control, and come back to win that game 63-49. That's just an unbelievable task, and they really made it look easy. Obviously fell behind early in that game, and going into the ball game, I thought it was going to be Thompson running the ball. They showed they could do that against Mountain Brook, and Mountain Brook showed that worked against Hewitt-Trussville a few weeks back when they upset the number 2 Huskies at the time. So I thought that was going to be the whole idea coming into the matchup for Thompson, to run the ball with both Talia and Shadrick, the running back and the quarterback there. And earlier they just weren't able to do it. They fell behind early, just like they did to Hoover earlier this season. But they chipped away at the lead. They were able to get back within 2 scores, and that's what head coach Mark Freeman said after the game. If we could get back within 14 points, we wanted to establish the run again because we felt comfortable, even down 2 scores, that we could run the ball and score that way. And obviously it worked. Over the last 2.5 quarters, Shadrick Bird put up 99% of his yardage total in that game, as well as his 3 touchdowns, had 207 total yards and 3 TDs on the ground alone, and 54 more yards through the air. We're going to talk about him more later on in the SCR Stars of the Week segment. But Talia Tungavaloa at the same time had a couple of touchdowns rushing himself, 112 yards on the ground, and also threw for 230-plus yards in that football game. So unbelievable performances from both Talia and Shadrick. The offensive line made it all happen, though, with some blocking that they did to allow some big reeled-off runs from both the quarterback and the running back. They go on to win that one, like I said, 63-49, despite trailing by 4 touchdowns really early in the second quarter with 10 minutes left in the first half. So an unbelievable performance to turn that thing around, and for the defense to get things adjusted at halftime. That was one of the best football games I have ever seen. Now Thompson flashes forward 1 week. They got a Thursday night game this Thursday against Crestview, so they'll be traveling to Florida to take on Crestview this Thursday. And another big game. Last year we saw Thompson, they were threatened in this final week against Hillcrest in Tuscaloosa there. And they almost lost the game. They were tested until the end, had to make some big plays late to win that football game. And so you wonder if they're going to take that, use it this year, and make sure that they're focused on this game. Last year, the starters played that entire game. I expect them to do the same this year. Obviously, you want to be healthy going into the postseason, so that's not 100% yet set in stone. But I do expect them to want to win this game. I expect the starters to play. If they do rest, I don't know what the outcome will be. But if the starters play, this should be a fun game. Crestview is a 7-2 football team that scored 55-plus points in 6 of their 9 games. So this is an offense that can light up the scoreboard, too. I don't think they're as good as Hewitt-Trussville. I don't think they're as good as Hoover being a classification lower in Florida. But at the same, and their schedule hasn't been as strong, but at the same time, this is an offense that's shown throughout the season that it can keep up with good offenses. It can put some points up on the scoreboard. So it should be a lot of fun to see these two teams go head-to-head, and I would expect a lot of offensive points. Whether Thompson wins or loses, not something that really matters. Obviously, you want to have that momentum going into the postseason with a victory, but the big focus for them really, first-round playoff matchup after this week, and then they're going to have some big matchups down the road if they're able to advance. Obviously, want to give your A effort. You want to focus on this week, but, it's just one of those seasons. Thompson's got some big aspirations, and I expect them to compete for a state championship. So get out of this game healthy and just do what you do. And if you come out with a win, that's a good thing. If you come out with a loss, can't hang your heads for very long as the playoffs start that following week. Spain Park's one of those teams I was talking about at the top of the show. They start the season 1-0, win their first game, lose 6 in a row after that, but now they're getting that momentum back. They've won 2 consecutive games, look to win a third in a row to go out of the season with 3 straight wins. And that's not only something that sends the seniors off with some confidence, with some happiness after a tough stretch through the middle of the year, but it also gives the team coming back next year, the returnees, some confidence going into the 2019 football season. This Thursday night, they get a Shades Valley team that's struggling. They really should win this game and end it with 3 in a row. I expect you to get a full effort from Spain Park, and Mason Pronk's really been stepping up over the last couple of games. Jalen Henderson's been consistent all season, and Pronk at quarterback is also getting some help with some receivers who are stepping up late in the year as well. And when you have a defense that's been as good and consistent as theirs, that's a good combination to have some offensive playmakers that can help out. During their rough stretch, it was the offensive struggles that really hurt this team. The defense got exhausted, started giving up a lot of points as well. So now that the offense is clicking, the defense is staying consistent, I really expect Spain Park to handle a Shades Valley team that struggled. They've lost 5 straight games to average opponents, in my opinion, a few of them at least. And one of those average opponents was a 40-30 loss last week to Pell City. So this is a 6A team that's struggling. Spain Park should be able to come out, take care of business. They've won the last two games by a combined 63-21, including a shutout of Oak Mountain, and in last week's 42-21 victory against Tuscaloosa County. So I expect Spain Park to build that confidence in the season on that 3-game win streak, send the seniors out with some positivity, and have some confidence coming back for 2019. While the Oak Mountain Eagles are 1-8 on the season, obviously on that 8-game losing streak after starting the season 1-0, it's a team that's building for the future right now. Obviously, you have the seniors and you have the players that want to win now, but also it's a team with a very young quarterback, got some playmakers coming up, and I think they're trying to build for the future while win now at the same time. And we see that with freshman quarterback Evan Smith, a kid that we talked about a lot early in the season. We haven't been able to talk about him as much over the last few weeks during that winning streak, but he's a kid, we talked about him early in the season because of his legs. He was able to reel off some big runs and kept Oak Mountain in some very big football games with tough opponents in Class 7A Region 3. And now we're starting to see his arm kind of progress, and that's something that I think lends to make you believe that they are building for the future, and they're trying to get this quarterback prepared for his next 3 years of starting. Seniors like Luke Purser obviously battling other players on the defense, and it's a team that wants to win, and they're going to give their effort. It's not a team that's given up on this year whatsoever. I know that this is a team that fights not only for themselves but their head coach, Chris Bell. They're not one of those teams that's going to give up. They've just become victim to a very difficult region. And this week they're going to have a chance to go out on top. Like I said, Evan Smith starting to see his arm a little bit, had 200-plus yards passing against Vestavia Hills last week. Obviously lose 28-14 as a comeback effort falls short. Vestavia started fast in that game. Oak Mountain unable to come back. But Smith, 200-plus yards passing, 2 touchdowns. That was one of his better passing games of the season. And as you see that kind of transgress and progress throughout the year, he's also got it to combine with his rushing yards as well and his running ability. So that makes him a very dynamic quarterback. You've got Luke Purser in the backfield as a running back, and then you've still got a solid defense despite struggles from games throughout the season. The defense has gone up against tough teams and has been on the field a lot because of those tough opponents and because the offense hasn't had long, sustained drives. When they do score, it's big, quick, chunk plays that tends to lead to their touchdowns. So this week, though, they get a center point team, 5A team, 2 classifications lower, that's just 5-4 on the season. This is a game Oak Mountain should win. It's a game that should not only give Smith confidence moving forward into his next 3 years, but especially into 2019, but it also gives these seniors something to be excited about. It's one last time they get to join each other on the football field. I'm going to repeat that a lot because I do think that's a special thing in high school sports. Some of these kids are never going to put on a football jersey again, and some of these seniors for Oak Mountain are going to have a chance to go out, play their hearts out, pick up a big win against Centerpoint, which I think they do, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's been a disappointing season for the Clear Eagles so far, and while albeit Helena's coming off a difficult loss last week, 37-7 to Pelham in a game that was for a playoff spot, they have a little bit more reason to be confident, but it's also been a struggle at times for them. So this is a big matchup for both teams as far as it goes next year, and the players that are coming back and the coaches and everything of that nature. I think a little bit bigger, however, for Helena. Clear, they're going to lose some players this year. They're a team that struggled this year. They're just going to put this one behind them regardless. For Helena, it's a first-year head coach. It's a team that's won 3 games in a row at one point after starting 0-4 and really had a chance to make that a 4-game win streak, lost in overtime to Jackson Olin in what would have been a huge upset. And then last week, obviously, a difficult 37-7 loss to Pelham in what was a game for a playoff spot. So, but that being said, this Helena team still got reasons to be confident. It's got reasons to want to win this game going into next season with head coach Richie Busby going into his second year next year, and a lot of these players being young and trying to build under him and learn his system. So I think this is a bigger game for Helena as far as moving forward. I think this can give them that momentum boost into the 2019 season. For Clear, it's just been a tough year. Their offenses struggled, especially over the last 3 games. Both these teams' offenses have struggled so far this season, but at the same time, Helena's got a little bit better of a defense. I do think their defense is going to make some plays to give them the better chance to win this game, but it's one of those teams where both offenses are struggling so much that it could go down to the wire and go either way. But right now, I think Helena's just got a tad bit more belief in them. They have reasons to be confident, and I think that's going to be the reason that they're able to pull out a win in this county matchup. This is going to be an interesting matchup between these two teams. You know, both teams have had their struggles at times throughout the 2018 football season. The Chelsea Hornets obviously started 0-7, but have now won 2 in a row. Pell City struggled throughout the year as well. They faced a difficult schedule and have struggled at times, but they are coming off a 40-30 win last week against 5A Shades Valley. So it's a Pell City team that sits at 3-6 right now. But both of these teams are very, evenly matched on paper. I think that the Hornets are slightly better on both sides of the ball, though. They're scoring 4 more points per game at 19.4 points per game and giving up 3 less points per game than Pell City. So they're slightly better by about 3 to 4 points on both sides of the ball. And that really just makes this an evenly matched game. Both teams are struggling at times on offense. Both teams have shown some promise on defense, but I do think Chelsea has a slightly better defense, and I also think this Chelsea team is playing with a lot of confidence. Pell City losing 6 of their last 7 games versus Chelsea winning 2 in a row, looking to go out with a 3rd win in a row. Turner Griffin's turned things around at quarterback. Collier Blair at running back. Some receivers are starting to make some plays, and they have a solid defense. Chelsea's going to have their chances to win this game. They've had tests the last 2 weeks. They've handled them. And I think that Pell City's really no better than those tests. So this should be a 3rd win in a row for Chelsea if they do what they're supposed to do and continue to improve like they have the last 2 weeks. We really could end this segment with Cole Garner's name. By now, you've had to have heard about it. His 3 safeties against Fairfield last Thursday night not only set a state record, but possibly even set a national record. It's a story that I think should be getting some national recognition, which you may hear about once it starts to take off a little bit and word starts to spread. But Fairfield shot themselves in the foot to set themselves up inside their own 5-yard line several times. Can lead to safeties. You expect that. But at the same time, you expect those safeties to be maybe 1 or 2 times they'll get a safety from different defensive players but it was one guy. It was Cole Garner all 3 times, and that just shows his determination to get after the quarterback, know the situation, and know that if he puts the quarterback on his back there, that he's giving his team some points and helping his team out, and he did it 3 times, and that's just unbelievable. He deserves a lot of credit, really our overall SCR Star of the Week. But that's just an unbelievable performance. And in a big win for Briarwood. Bounced back after a 21-7 loss to Ramsey. Bounced back, get this win 26-0 to end region play. Didn't matter towards their region standing or their playoff spot. They still got the number 2 seed regardless. But still an unbelievable thing for them to do to gain confidence moving forward. The offense all came from Luke Pruitt and J.R. Tran-Reno, 3 touchdowns combined, 164 yards combined as well from those 2 guys. So I expect that to lead them into this game against Hueytown and give them confidence. It's a Hueytown team that is very good, 8-1 on the season. I believe has won 8 consecutive games since their first game after a loss. So just unbelievable team that Briarwood will be going up against. 2 defensive teams, though. And with Briarwood's confidence on the defensive side of the ball and with their confidence coming back off a win, I do think it's a game they can compete in. I do think it'll be low scoring for a while. But at the same time, unless their offense is able to make some plays, that's been the concern for Briarwood all season, something they're going to have to shore up going into the playoffs. But Hueytown's got the team, I think, that can make a couple of plays on the offensive side of the ball despite dealing with Briarwood's difficult defense. I do think they're going to win a tight game. Near the end, I do think it's going to be a 1 or 2 score game. It could be a blowout. It could be a blowout. You never know in this kind of situation with Briarwood playing up a classification against a very good football team, but they showed they can handle it against Hartselle. They showed they could compete with Ramsey in a game where Ramsey was a team from 6A a year ago and was in the 6A state championship that they won 2 years ago. So Briarwood's shown that they can compete against these 6A teams this year. We'll see how they handle this one because Hueytown's very good, and it's going to take an A effort. It's going to be another interesting week for the Shelby County Wildcats, obviously coming off 2 heartbreaking losses to Central Tuscaloosa, a game that was for a playoff spot 2 weeks ago, and then Jemison a week ago. But both of those games, they lose by 9 points or less. They score 44 points in each of them. The problem is the defense gave up 50 and 53 in those 2 games. So the defense, which was carrying the team early in the season, has started to struggle. The offense, which was struggling early in the season, has started to play well. So we'll see if they can kind of put it all together in this final week of the regular season. They take on a St. Clair County team that has the exact same record at 2-7, a team they were familiar with in region play over the last couple of years. And I expect it to be a fun game. Both offenses are going to come out, try to put up a lot of points. It might be another shootout for Shelby County, and I think the experience of the last 2 weeks can help them in that situation. Wildcats do have a little bit better of an offense. They're scoring about 7 points per game more than St. Clair County is right now. That's 23.1 for Shelby County, and St. Clair is closer to the 15 to 16 points per game range. St. Clair County does have the better defense, however. They're scoring, giving up 3 less points per game than Shelby County at 28.7. That means Shelby County is giving up right around 31 points per game. So with those 2 things combined, I expect it to be an offensive shootout. Neither defense is really lighting it up. The offenses have shown at times that they can score a lot of points. I do expect that to be the case. Each team has just as good a shot to win as the other, but it should be a lot of fun. If you're a fan of offensive football, I'd get out and try to watch this game between the 2 bordering counties, Shelby County and St. Clair County. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the Vincent Yellow Jackets are playoff bound after a confusing, really, Friday night that led into Monday. The Yellow Jackets were told by the AHSAA that they are headed to the 2018 postseason, despite their 35-21 loss to Fayetteville last Friday. They win that game; they're in the playoffs regardless. But now they end up making it anyways. So it's a team that's won 3 games this year. They had 1 game advantage over both Fayetteville and Horseshoe Bend. So they do have a slight advantage there, and I guess that was the decision-making process as far as Vincent making it to the postseason. But, yeah, the Yellow Jackets do make it to the 2018 postseason, and it's such an accomplishment, a team that was so close to doing so last year. A lot of those players were back this year, and that was their goal. Despite losing their head coach, Wiley McKellar, they wanted to make it back and have that chance again, and now they're there. Chris Hardy and several other players that are seniors this year deserve deserve that honor. And for first-year head coach Lucas Weatherford, obviously a big deal as well, to get this team bought in and to believe, despite the struggles to start the year and despite some struggles really throughout the entire season, they've been able to win some football games and they put themselves in this position. And now they can kind of see that pay off. And while they're going to get a tough first-round matchup, that's a big deal to these players, a big deal for first-year head coach Lucas Weatherford as well. So this Friday night, they will get one more chance at a regular season win when they take on Asheville. It's an Asheville team that's at two classifications higher, which obviously gives them an advantage, but it's an Asheville team that's also 1-8 overall on the season. So that'll make it an interesting game. Both teams giving up around 30 points per game on the defensive side of the ball, while Vincent is scoring slightly more on the offensive side of the ball, about 7 points per game more than Asheville. The only thing that makes me think this game is going to be tough is because Vincent's been inconsistent at times throughout the season, and Asheville sits two classifications higher despite having a 1-8 record. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. It could go either way. Could be a blowout by both teams. Could be a close game. So this one's hard to tell exactly what's going to happen. But either way, Vincent's in the playoffs. They have a chance to go out, have some fun, celebrate, give some effort, and just have a good time Friday night knowing that you're in the playoffs. The Coosa Valley Rebels are our only AISA team to make the playoffs in 2018. Obviously, had some up and downs, some struggles, but a first-year head coach, a first-year freshman quarterback, Jamie Scruggs there, the head coach in his first season, and Brayson Edwards, that freshman quarterback. And there's been some up and downs. They have some veteran players on defense and offense, but breaking in a new quarterback, breaking in a new head coach, that can lead to some inconsistency throughout the season. Finished the regular season 4-7. Now they get into the first round of the playoffs, and they got a tough matchup. They'll be going up against the Escambia Academy, a top 10 team that's only losses have come to two other top 5 teams in Tuscaloosa Academy and Bessemer Academy. So obviously there's been it's been a good season for Escambia Academy. They're only giving up 15.5 points per game defensively, scoring 35.5 points per game, while Coosa Valley is scoring just 14 and giving up 27.8 points per game. So obviously the numbers don't align for Coosa Valley to win this game on paper, but they play the games for a reason. They have a chance, and either way, it's a building block for the future of this football team moving forward. A 4-7 year with a freshman quarterback and first-year head coach is nothing to be ashamed of. Team that's going to continue to build for their future, but first they have a game to play on Friday night, and they'll have a chance against Escambia Academy. That leads us into our final segment, our SCR Stars of the Week segment, one of the best segments each week as we name the best players from Week 10 of high school football around Shelby County heading into the final week of the 2018 regular season. And you got to start with the Thompson Warriors, that matchup against Hewitt-Trussville, and what the two running guys were able to do. Quarterback Talia Tungavaloa, running back Shadrick Bird, both had unbelievable performances in that game. And both with their legs. Quarterback Talia Tungavaloa obviously has a good arm, has been named on this show several times and throughout the country nationally for what he's able to do with his arm. And he did throw for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the big thing is he had 13 attempts for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, and his first rushing touchdown of the game was a long one reeled off that Hewitt-Trussville had no clue what was coming, and he had open field and reeled it a long run off to the house to get Thompson going in that game, and that's what really turned the momentum somewhat in their favor early before they started to really score and get the momentum completely in their favor, and that was because of Shadrick Bird. Bird really didn't get any carries until the second quarter and midway through the second quarter, but he reeled off 207 yards and 3 touchdowns with just running the ball alone over the final 2.5 quarters, and he's really one of the big reasons they were able to pull out that win and dominated the Hewitt-Trussville defense, in my opinion. Also added 54 yards receiving in the game as well. So an all-around impressive performance for Bird, who had 250 all-purpose yards, 250-plus all-purpose yards. And then you also, for Thompson, have to mention DJ Douglas, a kid that made an incredible interception in a game that was starting to go back and forth again after Thompson had made the comeback, taking the lead. You saw Hewitt-Trussville starting to get some confidence back on offense. And then after Thompson takes that lead late in the game, you do have Hewitt-Trussville gets the ball back with about 1:40 left. Paul Tyson pass is tipped, caught by his receiver, but then somewhat dropped, bounces off the foot. Douglas comes flying out of nowhere and just rips the ball right up right before it hits the turf, makes the interception. Thompson goes on to score and put the game out of the reach with less than a minute left shortly after. So that interception by Douglas really prevented what I think would have become an overtime game had he not made that interception and Thompson gone on to score. So obviously an important deal there for Douglas to make that big play and really seal the deal for Thompson in a huge win on national TV. Moving on in 7A, Mason Pronk, the quarterback at Spain Park, has just continued to progress the last 2 weeks in that 2-game win streak for the Jaguars. This past Friday against Tuscaloosa County, 8 of 9 passing for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also had 16 carries for 122 yards as well on the ground. So a nice solid 330-plus all-purpose yard game there for Mason Pronk at quarterback for Spain Park. Jalen Henderson continues to be consistent, had 95 yards rushing, a couple of scores on 18 carries. And then David Moultrie, receiver there, was able to reel off a big touchdown pass and ended with 95 receiving yards in that game for Spain Park as well. So they're getting more and more playmakers stepping up each week. Our last 7A player that I want to talk about is going to be Evan Smith at Oak Mountain. Obviously, we talked about him a lot early in the season, talked about him in the Oak Mountain segment of this show. He's used his legs throughout the season, but we're finally able to see the arm talent. And early in the year, I could tell you, he was inconsistent with his arm because he's still so small, still has a lot of growing, a lot of muscle to gain. But he showed that he can throw the ball downfield and take chances, and it showed off against Vestavia Hills. Didn't win that game, but he did finish with 209 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's going to be really a solid player to talk about over the years to come for the Oak Mountain Eagles. 6A, Collier Blair. He had another, really is starting to progress more and more. Still a sophomore running back, but had 120 all-purpose yards, 120-plus all-purpose yards for Chelsea as they picked up their second consecutive win last week as well. Not a game that was known for offense against Collier, but they were still able to put up 35 points in that win, and Collier Blair was a big reason because of his consistent play throughout the night. For 5A, you really just need to mention Cole Gardner's name. Like I said earlier, the 3 safeties, national record possibly, and definitely a state record. But for him to do that is just to take advantage and know the situation that he's in, and to get to the quarterback each of those times. You'd think they'd start double or triple teaming him at some point, knowing he's the guy that's going to be back there. But nonetheless, he fights it off, and he gets 3 safeties in that 26-0 win for Briarwood over Fairfield. Luke Pruitt and J.R. Tran-Reno also had solid games for Briarwood in that bounce-back win, 164 yards rushing combined as well as 3 touchdowns. Each had right around 80 yards on the ground. That's 2 solid playmakers. If they can get them going and get a slight hint of quarterback play consistency in the playoffs, this is a team still to watch out for because their defense, giving up 7.3 points per game, is one of the best in the state. If they have an offense in the playoffs, they are going to be a title contender despite having to play Viger in the second round. Moving on down to the 4A classification, we're going to talk about a couple of players there at Montevallo, and we'll start with Malik and Bennett. Obviously, 430 passing yards and 8 touchdown passes. Another record-setting performance, really, on Friday night for the Bulldogs. Kind of like Cole Garner setting the record with the 3 safeties. The 8 touchdowns is an unbelievable stat line for a young quarterback in Malik and Bennett. And like I said, 5 of those touchdown passes went to J.J. Evans. Another strong performance for him. Another 200-plus yard receiving game as he totaled 226 yards through the air receiving in that win for the Bulldogs. Obviously, Coach Wilcox wants to get the ground game going. We'll see how that progresses moving forward. But if you've got a quarterback throwing for 8 touchdown passes and 400-plus yards, in seemingly every game he's gone over 400-plus yards, that's not something you're going to be too concerned about, but you do want a little bit of balance. The final player that we're going to talk about, the Evangel Lightning, they pick up, we hadn't mentioned them yet, they pick up another ACSC state championship victory against Ezekiel last Friday in what was a thrilling game. Really went down to the wire, and Chase Jones was the difference maker in the game. Had a pick 6 late, up by 2 points, and that put them up by more. And then the ensuing possession, he has another interception, returns that one to the 4-yard line. Evangel scores again and puts the game away. He also had a 68-yard touchdown catch in that game, so a strong performance by Chase Jones in that state championship win for the Evangel Lightning. But that's our SCR Stars of the Week list this week. Obviously, going into the final week of the regular season, I'm going to keep my eye out, try to get as many seniors mentioned as I possibly can next week, knowing that this is the last game a lot of them are going to be playing really possibly in their careers, but especially at the high school level, and putting on that jersey one last time. So I'm going to try to mention as many guys as I possibly can next week, but that's the list this week. We've got a strong night of high school football coming your way on Friday night across Shelby County as teams either prepare for the postseason. You heard it. Some of these teams that aren't making the postseason are playing well right now and should give you a good show as well. So get out, take the chance, take the opportunity. Football comes for a few weeks every season, every year. So get out. It's almost over. Take the chance to catch some good high school football games on Friday night. But for now, that's going to do it from out here at Montevallo High School.